We welcome in Hall of Famer Joe Thomas, longtime Cleveland Browns offensive tackle. We brought you in here. We were talking a little bit about what's gone on down in Miami. And listen, you know as well as anybody, unfortunately, what it's like to work through some tough years organizationally when the wins aren't necessarily happening. What did you make of Tua's response publicly, talking about some of the things going on behind closed doors there?
I was pretty surprised because it seemed like he was self-incriminating, which I wasn't sure that was allowed in the American legal system, because he kept talking about the leadership and there's this lack of organization and nobody's being held accountable. And I'm thinking, you're talking about you. You're the captain. You're the quarterback. You're the highest paid person in the organization. And on top of that, you're talking about player-led meetings, and every players-only meeting or player-led meeting that I've ever been involved with usually involved the quarterback, because they're kind of an important part of an offense. And so it was really interesting. It was like, I don't know if he was trying to call himself out in addition to everybody else, or if he just didn't realize that by trying to maybe throw somebody else under the bus, he threw himself under the bus as well, because it all stops with the quarterback. It really doesn't matter who you have at head coach if you don't have a quarterback that can be the leader in that room, on that practice field, making sure everybody is following along and you are setting the standard as a quarterback, because everybody's going to look to you in good times or in bad, and you're the one that is setting the culture. You're setting the direction for the whole organization. And yeah, the coaches, they're a big part of that as well, but you're the one that has to hold everybody accountable, because you're the only one that gets to go out there on the field every single practice and every single game and gets to participate with those guys, especially on the offensive side of the football. So you have to be able to hold them accountable in the moment, which is something that a coach can't do.
Yeah, normally when a player is saying that at a podium, he'll say, and it starts with me. That's something Tua never said. He never brought his own name up, so we are all left to wonder if he was self-incriminating or throwing everybody else under a bus. Speaking of quarterbacks, the Browns have had 41 different starting quarterbacks since they came back in 99. Do you know how many you personally had to block for in your career? Do you know the number?
Yeah, just about half of them. So I think I had 20 starting quarterbacks and somewhere around 21, 22 quarterbacks that I played with, because a couple special fun situations. We got to put Terrell Pryor in there, a quarterback. We had different guys that were finishing games who never maybe actually had a start under center when I was there in Cleveland, but we had quite a few there. 41. Wow, that is a large number.
How difficult is that? You know, the Browns going through Dillon Gabriel right now. At some point, maybe they'll see what Shedeur Sanders can do. Started out with Joe Flacco. How difficult for that is for the other offensive players to go through quarterbacks like that?
Well, there's a lot of little nuance that as an offensive player is really important, and each quarterback is going to bring something different. And the first thing I think about is the snap count, right? The cadence, which is so important for an offensive lineman to be able to start moving the split second the football moves, the nose of that football starts to move, you need to move. So you have to anticipate the rhythm of the snap count, and every quarterback has a little bit of a different rhythm. And so just from the very basic part of getting off the ball on the snap, beating the defensive lineman to be the first one that moves off the football, that's so important. And so getting a quarterback in there, getting comfortable with his cadence and his rhythm and making sure that it's consistent, like that's something that I stressed about probably the most playing with all those different quarterbacks, because just the tiniest little difference in rhythm, you're going on anticipation. And if it's off by a little bit, it's either a false start or you're late, which might be even worse, because now you got TJ Watt running around the side, sacking your quarterback, sending him to the emergency room. So it's so important to have that cadence consistent. And then on top of that, for an offensive lineman, we don't have eyes in the back of our head. So we need to know where that quarterback's going to be. So on every passing play in the NFL and in most levels of football, they're going to design exactly where that quarterback is supposed to set up, where he's supposed to step up to as he's hitching in the pocket and going through his progressions. And so as a lineman, I'm blocking for that spot. I'm taking my kicks in my set based on where that play is supposed to be and where that quarterback is supposed to set up. And it's going to be a little bit different. You know, some guys are big, long striders and they like to get deep in the pocket. Played for Seneca Wallace, who is a shorter quarterback, but he liked to get deep because he felt like it gave him more opportunity to see down the field the further he was from that offensive line. And he was a guy that was mobile. And so he wanted to be able to have more space to be able to escape the pocket. And so everybody has their own little nuance that they like in the pocket from a quarterback position. position, and they're going to change a little bit, and you need to be able to change. And so those are all things that just take time to learn as you're practicing together, as you're playing together with a new quarterback.
You mentioned a smaller mobile quarterback. It's a great segue to Dillon Gabriel, who is manning the helm right now for the Browns. And I know everyone wants to keep wondering about when they're going to take him off the field, and we could live the Shedeur Sanders experience however it goes. But has Dillon played well enough so far in your mind to keep holding onto this job for the time being?
Well, when the Browns went to Dillon Gabriel, I think what they said was, we're going to at least give him 4 games because it's about a quarter of the season, and it'll give you at least a pretty good idea of what you're going to get from this guy, because they have to make a decision next season with their 2 first-round draft choice if they draft a quarterback next year, or if they like one of the guys that they have on the roster this year and they want to start building around that player. So I think, without anybody telling me this is just my opinion, because I think having a quarter of the season, having 4 games will really give you a good idea of who you have with Dillon Gabriel. And then you'll probably see, I would assume, Shedeur Sanders for maybe somewhere around that 4 games as well. Obviously, if Dillon plays really well, they're not going to sit him down for Shedeur Sanders. And I thought he played really well in his first game last week. I don't think it was quite as good of a performance. And I think some of that comes with the first time a defense sees a player, they don't really exactly know what he likes to do, right? But quickly they hone in on his tendencies and the things that he likes to do and the things that he doesn't think he can do very well. And then they're just going to spam those things that he doesn't do very well, and they're going to try to take away the stuff he does do well. And so I think with Dillon, he's been very cautious with the football. He's tended to throw to tight ends short and to running backs and receivers short as well, and hasn't pushed the football down the field. So we saw it last week with Pittsburgh. They're creeping their coverage up. They're playing more man coverage than they normally would, because they're just trying to take away those short throws. And then what's happened is they're trying to make the quarterback decide, okay, do I hang on to the football and push it down the field, doing something that I'm not all that comfortable doing right now, and take some shots? Or do I just hang on to the ball and keep hoping that somebody comes open early and underneath? And I think that's why he took so many sacks last week, because he was uncomfortable throwing the football down the field, because he's been very cautious and risk averse thus far at quarterback.